So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be continuing with the theme of going through some GCSE Maths higher past exam questions, looking at some big mark questions. Now as always there'll be a copy of the questions and the mark scheme for you to have an attempt at the questions before watching through this video, and all you need to do is just simply click on the link in the description below. Now a little reminder, if you've not had the opportunity to print out any of these questions, then all you need to do is to simply pause the video, have an attempt at the question and then unpause as we go through the answer. So looking at question 1, it says ABCD is a trapezium, and the question is asking us to work out the length of BC. So in order to work out the length of BC, what I need to do is be able to recognize that this shape here, the trapezium, is a right angle triangle on top of a rectangle. Now from this I then need to work out the height of that triangle, and the height is going to be the difference between the two parallel sides, so that's going to be 6 centimeters. And then from this I can then work out the length of BC, which I'm just going to call x. So here I've got BC squared equals, and it's going to be 10 squared minus the height of that triangle, which is 6 squared. So BC squared equals 64. So BC equals 8 centimeters, and there is my final answer. Now if I knew that that was 8 centimeters, as a bit of a bonus step I could therefore then work out the area of the trapezium, which is a question that sometimes can easily come up. So this would be again using the formula of A plus B times H divided by 2. So here A equals 3, B equals 9 and H equals 8. So substitute those numbers in, I get 3 plus 9 multiplied by 8 divided by 2 equals the area. So from this I can change that to a 4. 3 plus 9 is 12, so it's 12 times 4, so the area would be 48 centimeters squared. Moving on to question 2, it says the equation of the curve is y equals x squared plus 14x plus 52. By completing the square, work out the coordinates of the turning point, and we must show our working out. So for this, what we need to do is we need to factorize this in the form of y equals x plus a squared plus b, and your turning point, or the minimum point, is going to be at minus a b. Now the x ordinate is basically the value of x that makes the bracket equal 0, and b, let's use blue, and b is basically the constant at the end, so the constant outside the bracket. So let's first of all work with this. We've got x squared plus 14x plus 52. So I set up my template, so I've got x and I've got squared. The number that goes inside the bracket is always half the coefficient of x, so this time it's going to be plus 7. We carry the 52 over, and then we always subtract, regardless of the sign, the digit inside the bracket squared, so it's going to be minus 7 squared. So simplifying all of that, I get x squared plus 52 minus 49, which leaves me with x plus 7 squared, and it's going to be plus 3. So from this I can see that the value of x that makes that bracket equal to 0 is going to be minus 7, and the constant outside is going to be 3, so the coordinate is minus 7, 3. Moving on to question 3, it says here are two sets of numbers a and b. It says the mean of set a to the mean of set b is in the ratio of 3 to 8. Work out the value of x. So the first thing we need to do is look at set a. So if I look at set a, that the total sum is going to be 200 plus 160 plus 104 plus 100. And that equals, if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 564. So then the mean of set A, so set A mean is going to be 564 divided by the total number of numbers, which is 4, which gives me an answer of 141. Now 141 equals 3 parts. So 8 parts is going to equal 141 divided by 3 multiplied by 8, and that gives me an answer of 376. And if you're not sure about where I've got that from, it's 141 divided by 3 times 8. So that there is the average, well, the total sum, or the average basically, of these 5 numbers. So this is the mean of set B. Now, how do I work out the mean? Well, I add the numbers up, so it's 270 plus 400 plus 483 plus 300 plus x. I divide that by the total number of numbers, which is 5, and that should equal 376. So then if I do a bit of simplifying and rearranging and add all those numbers up, I get an answer of 1453 plus x, and if I take the 5 over to the other side by multiplying, I get 376 multiplied by 5, which equals 1880. So then taking the 1453 over to the other side, I end up with an x value of, using the calculator, 427. Moving on to question 4, it says that a television channel shows 12 minutes of adverts each half hour. How many minutes of adverts does it show between 5 AM and 11 PM? So here the hour difference between 5 AM to 11 PM is going to be 7 hours plus 11 hours, which is 18 hours. Now in that 18 hours, that equals 36 half hours. And if there's adverts every 12 minutes, so for lasting for 12 minutes every half hour, so we multiply that by 12, so it's going to be 36 times 12, which gives me an answer of 432. Heck of a lot of adverts. Question 5 then says that an inkjet printer can print 6 pages per minute. A laser printer can print 10 pages per minute. How much quicker is it to use a laser printer to print 30 pages? So for the inkjet printer, it's going to take 30 divided by 6, which is going to give me 5. So it's going to take 5 minutes. And then for the laser printer, it's going to be 30 divided by 10, which is 3. And the question's asking how much quicker is it? Well, just take away those two numbers, so the answer is going to be 2. Moving on to question 6, it says that a small toy is made by joining a solid cone and a solid hemisphere together. The cone and the hemisphere each have a radius of 6 centimeters, and the question is asking us show that the volume of the toy is 312 pi. So to work out the volume of a cone, well, that's going to be 1/3 pi r squared h, and the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. So they're the formulas that generally you would be given. So using these formulas, let's try and work out the volume of this particular shape. So here the volume of the cone is going to be 1/3 times pi times 36 times, now this length here is going to be 6, so that means that this height of the cone is going to be 14. So then if I type that all into my calculator, so 36 times 14, and which gives me 504. However, if this was on a non-calculator, I can divide the 36 by 3, so that becomes 12, and then I'm just doing 12 times 14. So 12 times 14 gives me 168 pi. Then I work out the volume of the hemisphere, which is going to be 2/3 pi times 6 cubed. So that's going to be 216 multiplied by 2/3, which gives me an answer of 144 pi. And then all I then want to do is add up the two volumes. So the total volume is going to be 168 pi plus 144 pi, which equals 312 pi, which is what they wanted me to show. Then moving on to question B, it says a larger version of the toy is made so that the dimensions are twice the size of the small toy. It's got a mass of 1.5 kilograms. The toy is made of foam. Work out the density of the foam. Give your answer in grams per cubic centimetre. So for this, I need to convert the mass into grams. So that's going to equal, so 1.5 kg is going to equal 1500 grams. Now, in terms of the volume, well, the volume of the toy, the small toy, is 312 pi. Now, if the length scale factor is twice the size, they're doubling it, so that means then that the volume scale factor, so let me just write that properly. So the length scale factor is 2, so that means that the volume scale factor is going to be 2 cubed, which is 8. So then here the volume of the larger toy is going to be 8 times 312 pi, which gives me 2496 pi. So then to work out the density, it's going to be 1500 because it's mass over volume. Oh, let me make that D not look like a P. So it's 1500 divided by 2496 pi, and that should give me an answer of 0.19, and that's to 2 decimal places. Now looking at question 7, it says that A is at 0, 2 and B is at 6, 5 are points on the straight line of A, B, C, D, and AB to BC to CD is the same, and we need to work out the coordinates of D. Now for this, what we need to do is we first of all need to work out the difference in the X values and the difference in the Y values to know what those jumps in the coordinates are going to be. So using the first 2 coordinates of A and B, we can look at the difference between the X ordinates, so that's got a difference of 6, so then that's going to be 12 and that's going to be 18, and then looking at the difference in the Y ordinates, we've got 2 and that's 5, so it's going up in 3s, so that's going to be 8 and that's going to be 11, so the coordinates of D is going to be 18, 11, and there is my final answer. On to question 8, it says 2 straight lines are shown. B is the midpoint of AC. TB to BC is in the ratio of 2 to 3, and the question is asking us to work out the coordinates of T. So for this, the first thing I need to do is work out the midpoint of AC. Now to work out the midpoint, all we got to do is just simply add the 2 X ordinates. So there is a formula of x1 plus x2 divided by 2, so y1 plus y2 over y2 over 2. So you could use this formula, or you can just use the fact that we're dividing the 2 lengths by 2. So the adding up the 2 X ordinates, we've got 23 plus 15 divided by 2 gives me 19, and 12 plus 6 divided by 2 gives me 9, so it's 19, 9. So that's the coordinate of B. Now in terms of the next one, so let me just write this coordinate down. So we've got 19, 9. Now if I just get rid of all this dash here, now to work out T, now we know it's in the ratio of 2 to 3. So TB, which is this point here, so if I can then work out what this length of the difference between the vertical and the horizontal between B and S, we know that the difference in the X is going to be 12. And we know the difference vertically is the difference between 9 and 3, which is 6. Now this equates, so 6, 12 refers to 3 parts. So then 1 part is going to be 2, 4. And then, so that equals 1 part. So then 2 parts is going to be 4, 8. So then the difference between here and here is going to be 8, and that's going to be 4. So going on from 19, so the x-ordinate of t, so the x-ord of t is going to be 19, take away 8, which is 11, and the y-ordinate of t is going to be 9 plus 4, which is 13. So the coordinates of t then are going to be 11 and 13. Moving on to question 9, it says that a straight line has a gradient of 6 and passes through the point 3, 19. And the question is asking us to work out the equation of the line, and we need to write it in the form of y equals mx plus c. So we know that the gradient is 6, so m equals 6. So if we write y equals mx plus c, we know that we've got y equals 6x plus c. Now from the coordinate, I know that x equals 3 and y equals 19. So I've got 19 equals 6 times 3 plus c. So c then equals 1. And then from this, I've got my 2 components to then substitute those into my y equals mx plus c. So y equals 6x plus 1. And there's my final answer. Moving on to question 10, it says that minus 3, 10 is on the point L, 4, 0 and 6, 10 are the points on line M. L and M are parallel, and the question is asking us to work out the equation of L, writing our answer in the form of y equals mx plus c. So the first we need to do is find the gradient of M. Now we do that by looking at the difference in y, which is 10, over the difference in x, which is 2. So the gradient of M is 5. So that means that the gradient of L is also going to equal 5 because it is parallel. So M equals 5. The next thing I've then got to do is to find the value of c. So here I've got y equals 5x plus c. Now I know a coordinate that L that lies on the line L, which is minus 3, 10. So x equals minus 3, y equals 10. So if I substitute those numbers in, I get this. And then simplifying it, I get minus 15 plus c. So c equals 25. And then using those two values of m equals 5, y equals 25, and this equation, I get y equals 5x plus 25, which looks correct because it's got a positive gradient and intercepts above 0, the y-axis above 0. Moving on to question 11, it says OABC is a kite, and the question is asking us first to work out the equation of A to C. So to work out the equation of A to C, the first thing I need to do is work out the gradient. So here m equals, now we know that the difference in y is 4, so it's 4, and the difference in x is 12, so it's going to be, simplifying that, is going to be 1 over 3. And we know the y-intercept is 4, so c equals 4, so the equation is going to be y equals a third x plus 4. Now moving on to question B, it says work out the coordinates of B, and this question is worth 6 marks, so quite a lot of work needed for this particular part. Now for this there's a few steps of what we need to do first. So the first step is to find the equation of OB. So we know that OB is perpendicular to the line AC, so therefore then the gradient of OB is going to be minus 1 over the gradient of AC, which I've previously worked out is minus a third, so that equals 3. Then because we know the coordinate of OB is 0, 0 because it goes through the origin. So x equals 0, y equals 0. So then using y equals mx plus c, we get 0 equals 3 times 0 plus c. So c equals 0. So the equation of OB is y equals 3x. The next thing I then need to do is to find this point here. Now to find intersection points of two lines, we need to then do is simultaneous equations. So the second step here, we've got y equals 3x and we've got y equals minus a third x plus 4. Now as they both equal y, I can have 3x equals minus a third x plus 4. If I take the third over, I end up with 3 and a third x equals 4. I then have x equals 4 divided by 3 and a third. And if I type that into my calculator, so 4 divided by 3 and a third, or 10 over 3, I get 6 over 5. So x equals 6 over 5, or that's going to be 1.2. And then from this, I can then find out what y is. So y equals 3 times 1.2, which is 3.6. So this coordinate here is 1.2 and 3.6. Now if I turn that into a triangle, so let me just zoom up a little bit here. So from this point here, that I know that this distance is 1.2 and this distance here is 3.6. Now because it's a kite, that is going to be the same as this distance here. So that's also going to be 1.2 and that's also going to be 3.6. So this point here, the x ordinate, is going to be 2.4 and this point of the y ordinate is going to be 3.6 times 2, which is 7.2. So the coordinate of B then is going to be 2.4 and 7.2. And there is that answer. Then moving on to question 12, it says that f of x equals a half x, g of x equals x minus x squared. And the question's asking us to solve the inverse function of f equals gf of x. So the first thing I need to do is work out the inverse function of x. So again, how do I do that? Well, I first of all make it equal to y, and I'm going to write it's x over 2. Then I make x a subject, so I've got 2y equals x, and then I just do a bit of substitution. So here I end up with f minus 1 of x equals 2x. So there's one part of the components. The next thing for me then to do is to work out what gf of x is. Now for this, what I need to do is I need to substitute f of x into g. So wherever I see an x in g, I'm going to swap that with f of x. So what I end up with is a half x minus a half x squared. Now simplifying that, I get x over 2 minus, and it's going to be x over 4, or x squared over 4. So that equals gf of x. So I'll just put a little box around that. Now in the equation, I'm going to make those two things equal to each other. So I've got 2x equals x over 2 minus x squared over 4. So if I change the fraction of this, so we've got a common denominator. So I've got 2x equals 2x over 4 minus x squared over 4. And if I multiply everything by 4, I end up with 8x equals 2x minus x squared. Then taking the 2x over to the other side, we end up with minus 2x, so we end up with 6x equals minus x squared. Now if we take the x squared over, you might be tempted here at this stage to divide by x, but we don't want to do that because we'll lose a value. So I end up with x squared plus 6x equals 0. And then I factorize, so I've got x multiplied by x plus 6 equals 0. So x equals 0 or minus 6. And there is my final answer. Then moving on to our last question, it says that the volume of a medal is 45 centimetre cubed. The medal is made up from copper and tin, and the volume of the copper to the volume of tin is 22:3. The density of copper is 8.96 grams per centimetre cubed, and the density of the tin is 7.31 grams per centimetre cubed, and the question is asking us to work out the mass of the medal. Now here we know that density equals m over v, so m equals d times v. So these are the two formulas that I need to know. Now the next thing I then need to do is first of all work out the volume of the copper and the volume of tin. Now for this I'm going to share 45 in the ratio of 22:3. So 45 divided by 25 equals, and that gives me 9/5. So then here I've got 22:3. So if I multiply both of those two numbers by 9/5, I get the volume of each of those. So times 22, I get 198/5, or if I write it as a decimal, it'd be 39.6, and 3 times 9/5 gives me 27/5, or 5.4. So these are the mass of each of those. So I now know the density, so I'm going to use this formula to work out the mass of the medal. So here the total density, the total volume is therefore going to be, well, let's work it out separately. So here the mass of copper is going to be 39.6 multiplied by the density, which is 8.96. So 39.6 times 8.96, and that gives me an answer of 354.816. And the mass of the tin is going to be 5.4 multiplied by 7.31. So 5.4 times 7.31 gives me an answer of 39.474. And if I add those two numbers up, I get an answer of 394.29 grams, and there we are done.